So thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here. I'll find the Zapper thing. So I should probably, before I explain what behavioural economics is, I should probably explain who I am, which is a hard question you might imagine because I used to be a philosopher. And in fact, I wrote a book on personal identity, the very question of who you are. I still don't know. But from a professional point of view, having decided I didn't want to spend the rest of my life in a library, I went and started working in an advertising agency, Ogilvy and Mather, which is where I met a man called Rory Sutherland, which is really where this story starts, because about 6 years ago, Rory Sutherland became the president of the IPA, the Institute of Practitioners in Advertising. And Rory had a burning interest in behavioural economics, and I was already familiar with some of the psychology. And what we were jointly interested in was understanding how this area of social science could help better understand how marketing and advertising work. And it turns out it can really help because both marketing and classical economics, to which behavioural economics is a response, tend to share the same assumption, which is that people make decisions by getting good information and working out what they want and seeking out prices and value. Now, that's the economist assumption. And it underlies a lot of marketing assumptions, though we wrap other stuff around it. We all know from a human point of view that's not how we do things. And really, behavioural economics is the study of how we really make decisions compared to how we might hope we make decisions. So let me give you my favourite examples. This is explaining the whole of behavioural economics in a single chart, right, or in a single example. So you all look like dynamic modern people who shop on the internet, right? So I'm sure you've all done that thing where you go shopping for something on the internet and you find the thing you want and you're very happy with the price and you put it in the basket and you press checkout and it says, please register, and you close the browser in disgust. Have we all done this? We just abandon that shop, right? Now, if you're an economist, that makes no sense at all because all there is to understand in economics is your preference for a good and the price you're willing to pay. And everything else is a minor detail. In the real world, we dislike processes not going the way we expect. We dislike being asked questions we think don't make sense. We dislike having things put in our way which we don't think belong there, which is why we really dislike registering on websites. If we took just a step back for a moment, which of course many people do because they do register, we know it won't take that long, nothing that bad is going to happen. But for some of the time when we're in a hurry, we just want to be out of there. Now, this example is very pertinent because there's a blog piece which has become quite celebrated called the $300 million button, which is about a website, presumably a very large retail website, changing that order of events. So where their site used to say register, they just changed the button so it said continue. Right? So you put it into it's a continue. Then it said, where would you like your goods sent? Which people find a perfectly fair and obvious question for a mail order business, so they happily give you their address. It then says, how would you like to pay? Which people find a fair and reasonable question for a mail order business, much as everyone likes free things, so they give you their credit card details. You can then say, would you like us to remember these details for later in case you come back? Many people say yes, this is registering. But they've done so without abandoning the basket and the sale is made. So this is why the piece is known as the $300 million button, because that's the sort of incremental sales caused by getting people to not abandon the basket, merely by changing the order you ask the questions you were going to ask them anyway. And behavioural economics is fascinated by these kinds of behaviour changes. And really, what they come down to is the very obvious fact when you think about it, that even tiny mental efforts can distort our behaviour. As soon as we feel we don't know what's going on, we are likely to change our mind, right? And we're very malleable when we sort of see new opportunities. So we used to, one of the accounts we used to actually at Ogilvy early on was EasyJet, and it was always this thing where you say to someone, would you like a city break in Dubrovnik? And they say, that's crazy, I don't know what's there, I don't think I've even heard of it. You say, you can fly there for £19. They say, tell me more about Dubrovnik, right? So this sort of reverse of behaviour when the opportunity is made possible, this is the kind of thing we're interested in. And what you learn, one of the things behavioural economics talk about is that one of the ways you can save effort is to use what they call a heuristic. So heuristics are sort of what we call a mental shortcut. So the first rule says that people think in shortcuts. Or in this case, because it's Christmas, they think about shortbreads. So I'll go it's my theme chart. I'll use the traditional one. People think in shortcuts. Okay. So what they do is you use a rule to shortcut the decision and make it easy for you. So one that we all know, and is a good, interesting example is, if you don't know much about wine, when you see that wine list, second from bottom can't be wrong. Do people do this? Are people familiar with this rule? You may not do it, right? But everyone knows that rule. So it's like, oh yeah, that was pretty. Now, interestingly, of course, restaurants are perfectly aware that people do this. So that actually the most margin is built in the second from the bottom on the wine list, because that's the one you're going to pick, right? So if you want the best value, actually pick the cheapest. The problem is then you have to explain it to your date, right? Because it's not only a good decision-making shortcut, it's a social norm. It's reinforced by the fact that other people do it. So you get these kind of things where, so the simplest shortcuts, you just do what other people do, or you can outsource the effort, right? It's effectively outsourcing the effort, doing what other people do. And what I've become fascinated by is that brands themselves are shortcuts. So if you wanted to work every decision out based on first principles, based on what should I want from this purchase, what's the quality of this particular product, does it come up to that, you go slowly but surely mad trying to work all this stuff out. Whereas you just go, I need a new TV, Sony make good TVs, job done, right? Brands are shortcuts to shopping success. So what brand owners should really be doing is thinking, well, how can I create shortcuts to make it more likely that people do the thing I want them to do? And I think this is the real secret to what you need to understand at Christmas, because Christmas is an incredibly fraught time, because I think we all know that buying a decent present, or present buying, and I'm going to talk mainly about gifting here. I realise there are other sales at Christmas which aren't gifts. I'm happy to talk about those in the questions. The gifting is difficult, and the secret is, if you can understand what's difficult about gifting, you can help people do that better, and that will give you a better Christmas. So, how to understand this? Now, the first thing, where the place to start is that, who doesn't love presents? Turns out there are people in the world who really don't like the principle of gifting. They're called economists. Economists loathe gift giving, right? And in one man in particular, the wonderful Joel Waldfogel, dislikes Christmas so much. He wrote a paper called The Dead Weight Loss of Christmas, right, which is, you can get free online, most of the arguments in there, and he followed it up with this book, Scroogeonomics, which is basically just a longer version of the argument. The paper is better. Why does he dislike gifts so much he's gone to the effort of writing a whole book about it? It's as simple as this, right? If you have, say, £20 to spend, right, if you spend £20 on yourself, the economist would say you are most likely to realise £20 of value on what you buy. If someone else spends it on your behalf, the chances they will achieve £20 worth of value is considerably lower. So by spending £20 on someone's behalf and giving them a gift, you realise maybe £15 worth of value. QED, the gifting process, destroys £5 of value. Or in Waldfogel's worldview, billions of dollars every Christmas, right? Now, this is a valid economic exercise. What it does is it badly misunderstands why people give gifts, which, to be fair to Waldfogel, he does concede to some degree, right? But what is interesting in his analysis is that what it exposes, in fact, where great gifting is. Because it's in that assumption that people know themselves better than anyone else that great gifting comes in. Because in fact, often we don't know ourselves as well as we might. And the great gifter is someone who understands that, or if you help them do that, that's when great gifts happen. And this is actually, turns out this is the definition of a great gift. So you might, I suppose maybe some people are waiting for this definition all their lives, right? People are good at this, but it's not that exciting. It's pretty obvious when you think about it, right? So a great gift is when someone gets more pleasure out of the thing they get than they could have got if they'd spent the same amount of money on themselves. So it means that someone gives you something which, so it can be absolutely the same thing you might have bought yourselves, but you get more pleasure because that person gave it to you, or someone takes money you would have spent and spends it better than you would spend it. And I think we all know that some people go and spend money on our behalves better than we could. And that's what makes for a great gift. Interestingly, behavioural economists do know this. One of the doyens of behavioural economics is a man called Richard Thaler, who with his partner Cass Sunstein wrote a book called Nudge. And in one of his early papers called Mental Accounting, he says, economists think that gifts are about the exchange of value. Everyone else knows you should just buy someone something they wouldn't buy for themselves. Right? So he does realise this, and he's published that point of view. So we're looking for these sort of breakdowns in the possibility of gifting, because there is a gap where we do find it hard to give for people, especially people where we don't know them particularly well, we don't know their preferences, and I think that's where brands come in. So the first thing you can do to get a great gift is where you know someone better than you know them, they know themselves, right? And it's true to say that many people are simply unaware of their preferences, or they have crude preferences which you can develop for themselves. So if they like crime novels, they may not like the best crime novels, right? And if you know more about that, you can find them for them. It's a simple question of filling in people's tastes. Now, of course, this is something which I think, and you'll be hearing from the man from Present Finder later, this is exactly the kind of thing where careful information, good information can help you if you become an expert on something that someone themselves doesn't have time to become an expert in, so you can effectively know their taste better than they would know themselves. And that's more likely to lead to sort of gift-giving success. Now, this is why it's probably easiest, when it is easiest, to buy gifts for the people we know best. And it's a sign of actually knowing someone very well that we can buy them something where they go, oh, I never knew I wanted that until I saw it, and now I see it, I realise I've always wanted it, right? That we know is a really great gift moment. And when we can do that for a loved one, we feel wonderful, and that's why we persist in the whole enterprise of gift giving, despite the many failures and the occasional mishaps and the Waldfoglian destruction of value which can ensue. There's also the permission factor. So this, I think, goes to Thaler's point. You should buy someone something they wouldn't buy for themselves. So I swear, like, my mother would never, ever buy herself a bottle of champagne. She loves champagne. If you give her a bottle of champagne, that thing will not be around for long. I'm not suggesting she has a problem. She just has a strong preference for champagne expressed through rapid consumption. Right? So, if occasional. So, as it happens, I'm one of those people who I can tell if something's a good champagne because a very good champagne is quite heavily carbonated. It gives me an almost instant headache, right? That's why I give it to my mother. This is a very effective system, right? But she will only ever drink champagne when I give her champagne. It has to be received as a gift. This is a permission thing, right? And that's part of an austerity upbringing, or, oh, we live in a time of austerity now. Sorry, silly me. But there's this thing where people, they say, I would buy that, but I need someone to give permission. And this is the thing where people say by each other, oh, I'd love to have a new TV. Oh, but you'll buy it for me for Christmas because if I bought it for myself, that'd somehow be selfish. It's a way we negotiate some of these purchases, right? So it's a perfectly legitimate thing, the permission-giving part of gifting. We also have the search part, and I think this is actually one of the most interesting things about gifting, is that we tend to assume that the effort of finding something you really want isn't that great. But we all massively underestimate the effort of shopping. Not just the physical effort of schlepping from shop to shop, but knowing where to go, and even on the internet, knowing where to look, and how to find the thing you want. And the truth is that many people, they know what they want, but what stops them being able to get it is they just simply don't know where to look for it, or they're unable. So, again, this is another very personal example. My dear grandmother, who is 100 and a half now, those halves become very important when you've passed that 100, I can tell you, right? Once wanted a new handbag, she's very clear on the colour and the size, but where, unsurprisingly, she finds shopping quite an effort, right? She doesn't use the internet. So, but as you'll come to learn, I've worked for some years with TK Maxx. I'm a big TK Maxx shopper, and I knew I could nail that handbag at an excellent price. And sure enough, a cream handbag of the appropriate size was discovered by visiting only 3 stores, but it's a pleasure to me. I love searching in those places. Right? But my grandmother is delighted beyond all reason with this bag, and not just because it's a £70 saving on the original list price, but I was pretty chuffed with that part, right? So, and it's this thing where, so definitely there, I've spent the money better than she could herself because I've closed the gap of finding the thing that someone couldn't make. I think, again, we tend to assume that if people like stuff, they'd know where to find it. And that's really not true. And more gifts simply close that gap between what people want and how they would find it. And all of this is to add up to an understanding of it's all about getting to know people or showing that we know people. And this is absolutely absent in the economists' analysis of gift giving, where they really regard it as a sort of redistribution of wealth. It's a voluntary redistribution of wealth where people without money give it to people with money give it to people without money. This is a very odd view of how it should work. It's in fact what we're trying to say is, because I care about you, because I love you, I know what you need in life even better than you do, and I'm willing to put the effort into making that happen. I'm going to find experiences or things in the world that will give you pleasure that you could not anticipate for yourself. And that is a wonderful thing to do, but I'm not naive. I know it's a hard thing to do. And anything which a brand can do, a retailer, a brand itself, to create that moment, or to help create it and make it more easier or more obvious that that's happening, and reduce that the risk that goes with getting it wrong, then the better you would do. Now, I think one of the things you can ask yourselves whether this rings true is that one of the fears we have is giving someone that bad present that says, I'm sure we've all had it, we get a present from someone, they go, they gave me that, it's like they don't know me at all, right? It's, we all had that slightly unfortunate experience. It's like, used to go, yeah, golf stuff. I've never touched a golf club in my life. I was like, was this for someone else? You know? People totally, it's a slightly parallel example. When someone was trying to sell me a job once, which would involve relocating to Kuala Lumpur. And this man from M&C Saatchi, who was a brusque Australian, says, Nick, this is my Australian accent, just so you're clear, he says, the great thing about Kuala Lumpur, it's a terrible accent, I know, is you can indulge any vice you like. I thought, you know what, I know that sells it to some people, but that really, you've misunderstood your audience. Right? It's like you don't know me at all. Right? So that was it, that was the end of my interest in that job. Right? So, and that's the way, when you really tell off, you do real damage to a relationship. I'm sure people have had that thing where they've come to sort of question how much a friend knows them through a gift, right? So there's a huge risk. And people also, they understand that the more money they spend on a gift, maybe the higher that risk gets, which is why, especially between parents and children, it is acceptable to give cash or to approve the gift. So they say, I'm willing to spend up to X £100 on a laptop or X £1,000 on a car if you're that extravagant, right? Because you'd have to know something incredibly well to spend that kind of money and be sure it will go right. So there's this interesting sort of range of things where cash becomes an acceptable gift, other substitutes. And they're all flexing on how well we know the other person, but also how well we can recover from the error. So I've always assumed, I've never had to, for various reasons, never entirely tested this hypothesis, that engagement rings must be fully refundable. So that was sort of, maybe I'm just sort of like, there's lack of romance in me there, but it's just like, that's a big risk, isn't it, if you don't know the answer, surely. So who would lay out, does someone actually know the answer to that? It's perplexed me for years. So, no. It's not true. Good God, people are mad. That's the other behavioural economist, people are mad, is my noisy conclusion. So it's all about showing people know. If your brand can help people show that they know the people they care about better than they know themselves, you will be winning in this marketplace. Now, there are some sort of in-between areas. So I think this is a classic in-between area, would be the gift substitute, right? And the classic gift substitute is the gift card. Because there's a thing where, like, if you just sort of say, oh, especially with someone you don't know so well. So this is like cousins, second cousins removed, colleagues you kind of feel obliged to give something to. If you offer to sort of like, so I've worked with you for 3 years, it's Christmas time, here's a £20 note, knock yourself out. That would be strangely odd. Whereas you can say, here's £20 to spend at Millets, right? I'm sure Millets do gift cards, and they do an excellent range of outdoor sporting equipment, if you know that's what someone likes. Now, again, from the economist's point of view, cash has to be better than a gift card, right? Because you have the value, and then you bound the value. But by restricting the value, we say, oh, we know something about you. It's a kind of in-between house, right? I know you'd like to spend some money on something like this. Obviously, I realise with children, you're going, I could give them cash, they just spend it on drugs and alcohol. At least if I give it iTunes vouchers, they just spend it on violently misogynistic rap music, which has to be some sort of upside, right? So I understand there's a desire to bound the way money is spent to prevent harm, okay? There's other occasions. But we're trying to show to some degree that we understand a person a bit. And I think there's a really interesting gifting sweet spot that you can create as a brand for things to give to people who you don't know that well or like that much, but you're obliged to give them something. So, and I think actually Boots, who's people I worked with looking at the psychology of their 3 for 2 offer, another story, do incredibly well at Christmas because they do a lot of 3 for 2 gifts at very good price points. So basically there's like stuff over about 20 quid, which is for real people you actually like. There's a tenner, which is like disposable for people you don't want to be embarrassing about, and a fiver, which is like totally token gifts, right? And you buy stuff, the reason you buy someone soap is because everyone uses soap, so it can't go wrong, and it's in some sort of, and what you tend to find that do is you mix something consumable, like soap, with something durable, like a travel bag. So it's like something to keep so that you know that I care, something to use so it can't be wasted. So you kind of split the difference between, say, well, the worst comes to the worst, at least they clean themselves, right? This would be and the same if you give someone like a nice caddy of tea, you know, the worst comes to the worst, they have a cup of tea, and they might get a nice box to keep out of it, right? So there's a sort of almost a hedging your bets. And I think a lot of brands actually, that's what they're trying to create, are those in-between presents for those in-between people. And that's a lot to do with risk reduction and being able to show you know enough and care just enough for things not to go wrong. And the gift card is maybe one way of doing this. Charities do quite well with those things where you can just say, well, I don't know what to spend on you, but I know you're a caring person, so I spent the money on something useful for other people, which is a good way actually. Waldvogel does make this excellent suggestion. If you happen to need to give gifts to millionaires who don't need anything, giving the money to charity in their name is probably the best thing to do, because that raises their esteem in the world by not giving them the one thing they don't need, which is more money. So I thought there's a neat, if he got one thing right. So if any of you happen to need to gift to millionaires this Christmas, Joe has helped you there. So I just wanted to, for this last bit, I just want to sum up. I've got 5 sort of rules of what I think you should as a brand to kind of capture what I said. Now I'm just going to talk about a Christmas ad that I actually was involved in. So the first of these is to say, make it as easy as possible. If there's even the slightest barrier in any process or in someone's feelings about something, that can be enough to put some of them off wanting to do it. So take everything out of the process that you can. The second one is look to bridge that knowledge gap. So that can be things as simple as labeling, sometimes with publishers, it's like, this is why charts work. If it's in the top 10, right? Or if you have a sticker on the book that says, crime lovers will love this novel, right? The perfect cookery book for the person who loves cooking. These very obvious, it's like, yeah, obviously not the perfect cookery book for people who like mechanics, right? Maybe there is a cookbook for everyone. There's a cookbook for everyone out there these days, right? But even those things, well, surely this is stating the bleeding obvious, right? But that reassurance that it is exactly what you hope it is in fact quite useful in this. This is why, if you think about it, why do gifts exist in almost every tourist resort that say, a gift from Edinburgh with a tin of shortbread, right? So it's like, well, why does it need to say it's a gift, right? But it's like, well, now I'm confident I'm giving a gift, I'm confident I'm receiving a gift, right? It says gift, right? We're all in on the gifting. There's curious, this incredibly explicit world of gifting exists. But there's nothing wrong with that. When you create a gift pack like that, right, that's fine. So the other thing is to create better gift alternatives. So increasingly, lots of people just have too much stuff. You do see this actually with wedding lists, that because when people get married later, they own everything they're ever going to need, right? They simply do not need another domestic appliance, right? Or indeed another fondue set. So I was very chuffed. I picked up a completely unwrapped fondue set at my local charity shop. Le Creuset fondue, 10 quid, I know. Right? I thought that is your classic abandoned wedding gift right there. That's the whole thing. So have I used it? No, right? Will I give it to someone for a wedding after about a year when I'm bored with it? Yes, right? Almost unquestionable. Some things I think gifts exist just to be re-gifted endlessly. That's their kind of purpose in life. The Le Creuset fondue set may be one of these items, right? Maybe no one's ever actually used one. But I think there's what alternatives where you create experiences or you give people access to something. So the Red Letters Day enterprise is quite interesting in that regard. And I think more and more as brands allow people to immerse themselves in. So it's not enough to know that someone likes Guinness, right? And it's not enough even to go to the Guinness experience. Can you have a day of actually brewing the stuff? Or can you buy someone a day at their local craft brewers? Or that kind of deep immersion is actually, I think, what people crave in the modern world. So one of the things you should definitely show as a brand is show that you get gifting and its perils. And the example I'm going to talk to you, which is a TK Maxx ad, I think does this really well. I think I know everyone wangs on about the John Lewis ads, and I can get quite passionately upset about it. I don't like John Lewis. There's something about it makes me come out in hives. But I know I'm unique, or not unique, but I know I'm quite unusual in this. I think in its absolute, the best of those Christmas ads, which is the one where the little boy waits and waits and waits to actually give a gift rather than receive it. The reason why that was so successful, and it's probably the best of that whole campaign, is because it so perfectly says John Lewis is a place that understands the absolute nature of gifting. It goes to the absolute heart of it's better to give than to receive, and where the anticipation comes of what's hard about it. That's why that ad actually works better than some of the other ones. And last but not least, what you need to do is in communications or in advertising and marketing is you need to communicate the feeling of success rather than telling people necessarily that's why it's going to work. So again, there are lots of rational reasons to shop at certain retailers, excellent refund policy, wide range of goods. But actually I think saying, oh no, this is a place where your biggest fear, which is giving a bad gift and waiting on money, can't happen here. And if you give people that feeling of confidence, that's when they'll come to you time and time again to solve that problem. So let's quickly look at this. Just looking at the clock there, having to do some sums in my head. Yeah, I'm going to finish exactly on the half hour as I promised, am I? I think it's like I've done this before. Right, so I haven't done this talk before. These words in different order, I swear maybe, but not actually. No. Some of it's new, some of it's old. So this is, years ago I was very lucky to work at an agency called Duckworth Finger Waters, and we did some work, and I was part of the team that actually came up with the strapline for TK Maxx, big labels, small prices. In fact, I may have even written that on the brief. It's like my most enduring achievement in life, which is kind of like 50 million carrier bags later. What can you say, right? So, and people say, wow, was it hard to come up with that idea? No, came up with a split second, and everyone said it was rubbish, but it persisted anyway. So, and since I've been working myself, I've sort of gone in. They are a discounter, so they never really have any money to pay anyone, but occasionally go in, and I talk to them about this Christmas ad. And what I think is really great about this, there's a couple of lines I've always loved, the way it mixes the aspiration of what gifting is about with that fear of getting it wrong. So the line in it says to the wise men, to the wise men and women, and to the gift-giving genius. And I always love that line. So it said, that's what you want to be at Christmas. You want to be someone who's a gift-giving genius. And it said, we're a place where you can be that. And it has that line at the end that says, love your Christmas, respect your money. And I think there is an interesting, so I talked at the beginning about the Waldvogel principle that gifting destroys value. Interestingly, TK Maxx can reverse that, because if you have a £100 product that you've only paid £30 for, if someone only gets £30 out of value, that's fine, because it would have been £100 of value. So that you give them a £100 thing on the cheap, so you can just, sorry, the sums are slightly, maybe I'm leaving people behind, right? So there's a £100 thing, right, that someone should get £100 worth of value for. If they only get 50 and you paid £100, you would have lost £50. If it's a £100 item, you only paid 30. Even if they only get £50 of value, you've gained £20 of value, right? Which is why people like buying Christmas things in sales, in reductions, because it actually cushions out that destruction of value, which people do intuit. So let's have a quick look at the ad, and I'll wrap up. So at that point, I'd be happy to take any questions you have.